Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Fetishin with Fetishin CPA Group. And if you're like me, your parent or your kids just got kicked out of school for at least the next couple of weeks. Now, the good thing is we've got a little bit of government programs going on to help offset the inconvenience and ultimately cost of that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There is a bill that is pending right now to go to the Senate. It has passed the House. So we're going to talk about what's in that. Now, like a lot of bills, it contains a variety of items, some of which we're going to touch on at a very high level, and others we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into, namely employee time off that is getting incorporated into the new way going forward, and then how small businesses are going to alleviate the extra cost and inconvenience of that. We'll also touch on things buried in the bill for self-employed people, and then how the government's going to assist the small businesses in paying for these extra benefits. So first of all, it's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. It was introduced and passed the House of Representatives on March 14th. And coming up next week, it should hit the Senate, which I would expect it to move fairly quickly. I'm sure there's going to be some changes, just like there always is in regards to bills. But I don't think there'd be a whole lot of controversy with this, and I wouldn't expect it to be stuck in the Senate like a lot of the bills we've had in our political environment lately. But just know that there could be some changes to what's in this presentation now because it's not final yet. So the first thing in there is expansion of some food assistance programs. That's your SNAP programs. And just broadening the base of how the states can operate and with school lunches. So there's getting more budget basically to deliver on some of the food programs that are available at the local levels. There's also enhanced medical assistance. So for most of us, that's going to be free testing for the coronavirus. And that includes for uninsured people as well. So there shouldn't be any cost for that testing. And there's also some respiratory, uh, assistance tools that will become available as well. But what we really want to focus on today, being the CPA in the small business world, is the time off and how that's going to work. So there's a couple pieces to it. This is the high level. First of all, this is going to be a permanent change for all businesses going forward. There will be a requirement to have at least 7 days of paid sick time off for employees. Every employee qualifies. Then in an expanded scenario where there's a health emergency that's declared by the government, that 1 week is going to go to 2 extra weeks. So a total of 3 potential weeks of paid time off for employees. And then finally, a expanded time off program under the FMLA Act that could provide paid time off of up to 12 weeks for employees continuing to get paid by their employer. So let's walk through each one of these to see how they might come into play for you. So the first one is the 7 days off. It's going to require all employers to provide sick leave after 60 days of employment. Employees are going to get 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours that they worked. And for those of you on salary, it's going to accrue at normal 40 hours of assumed work time. You can accrue up to 56 hours per year, which is 7 days. And it does carry over from year to year, the time that you do accrue, but employers are not required to allow you to have more than 56 hours. They can, but they're not required to. And as long as employers have current sick leave policies that are at least as good as this, they can keep those without having to amend them. But for everybody else that may not currently provide for sick days off, we're going to have to start doing that. So the use of the time off, most of it is for your typical, health maintenance and going to the doctor and all those kinds of things. But there is one kind of interesting clause that's also inserted in here, and it's the caring for a child or parent or spouse. That includes a school or other facility closure when it is ordered by a federal or state official, and that does not matter whether classes continue to go online and so forth. But if there's a physical closure of the location, it does qualify. So that's for children in elementary and high school, and anybody else that might not be able to provide for self-care. So if you're taking grandma, for example, to a facility during the day, and that facility has now shuttered, you could stay at home with grandma and take care of her if she's unable to take care of herself, and this would qualify. Now, the second kind of time off is under the emergency declaration. It applies to employers that have under 500 employees. And when there is a declared public health emergency, these benefits immediately accrue. Full-time employees will get 14 equivalent days off of emergency sick time. This is in addition to the maximum of 7 days that they get under the mandatory requirements being instituted now as well. Why is it equivalent days? Because it's 2 weeks away from employment in total. It basically includes weekends. So if we're looking at it over a 2-week period of time, then employees could take off 10 days, assuming 5 days per week over 2 weeks. They would get actually 10 days of paid time off for them to allow for them to take a 2-week span away from employment. I know it's a government bill and they have to word things really weirdly. So instead of just saying 10 days of time off, it's 14 consecutive days away from being at work. But for most of us, that means 10 actual days of benefit. And then part-time employees are going to receive the equivalent of 14 days of time off. So if you only work 2 hours a day, then you're going to get paid 2 hours per day based on this. So it's the same thing as a day off for you. Now, how much do you get paid during the time off? For the first 2 weeks, you will get your normal rate of pay. So full pay, 2 weeks time off. If you are, coronavirus related, you're going into quarantine, you're getting diagnosed, you think you have symptoms, something like that. Now, the school closure that we discussed earlier that I pointed out is paid out at 2/3 of your regular rate for the family care. So do be aware of that. You won't get quite the same amount of benefit as if it's coronavirus related. So obviously, this creates a little bit of problem for business owners out there. We're talking about 2 extra weeks, and if you didn't provide sick care before, up to 3 extra weeks of time off that might have not been in your budget. Well, the good thing is when there's a public health emergency, which like the one that has been declared for coronavirus, so everybody gets these 2 weeks as soon as this bill is passed, there are incentives to business owners. So the first thing is any wages paid to the employees for the 2 weeks that they're out will be reimbursed via a tax credit to business owners. So the employees that are out for these 2 weeks and taking their leave pay, it's at no cost to the business owners. Now that obviously is aside from, loss of productivity, but we're talking money out of pocket. Business owners will also get a credit for the employer part of FICA taxes, that's your Social Security and Medicare, that is paid on those wages. Both of those credits are going to come through your payroll taxes. So each quarter, and they are refundable, each quarter it will apply to your payroll tax filings. So you'll either pay a significantly reduced quarterly payment or get a refund when you file your 941s. For those of you who may not have employees or payroll but are self-employed, this also applies an equivalent way to you. So you would essentially get a replacement of your missed earnings due to a 2-week illness and time off. I won't go into all the mechanics right now of how that works, but just be aware that it is available to you self-employed folks. Now, everything in here when I discuss self-employment is income actually subject to that self-employment tax. So if you have been super aggressive on your tax returns the last couple of years and shown very, very little income, you know who you are, then your benefit under this program is going to be limited or not available to you at all. So just be aware of that as well. Now, the third piece of this legislation is an expanded FMLA Long-Term Leave Act. So this is where we really get the long time off. So again, it's applicable to employers with under 500 employees and the government. You have to have been with your employer for at least 30 days for this to apply. You do get up to 12 weeks of paid leave under FMLA due to coronavirus specific needs. So this is a long-term leave benefit now, but it is specific to coronavirus. So it's not a permanent benefit going forward past 2020. So what does that mean? Well, you've got to have a requirement or a recommendation to quarantine because you've been exposed or have the virus. You have to care for an at-risk family member that has also been exposed and recommended or required to quarantine, or again to care for a child or another individual due to closures because of the coronavirus. Now, this takes effect after the 2-week emergency leave that's provided through the employer benefits we just discussed. So who's a family member in this case? Because that's important. Who are you going to be caring for? It's your parents, spouse, siblings, son or daughter, and a grandparent or grandchild. So keep those in mind as you're thinking through whether or not you qualify. So once you've determined that you might qualify, what does this look like? You're going to get a monthly payment for 2/3 of your average monthly earnings up to $4,000. Now, again, this is after the 2 weeks that you should have been paid your full rate. How do we calculate your average monthly earnings? Well, it's going to be your W-2 wages and or self-employment income of last year on your 2019 return divided by 12. So that's your monthly average earnings. You take 2/3 of that, and that's how much you will get paid over this expanded 12-week maximum leave period. Now, in order to qualify, you have to qualify for this leave every 30 days, up to 3 months. So within a 30-day period of time, you have to have at least 14 emergency leave days during each 30-day period. So that's 2 weeks off for 3 consecutive months, and you would qualify for the extended leave payments under this act. But if you get it, it's also tax-free. So when we're looking at removing all the taxes, that might be pretty close, if not right on what you would get paid at your full rate anyways. So there's that benefit. So businesses, again, you're paying somebody, they will remain on the payroll, and business owners will continue to pay that payroll for the 2/3 of what they would normally be paid. But we get a tax credit for these extended payments. You get up to $200 per day per employee or $10,000 per quarter. You also get a tax credit for any of the FICA taxes that would be due on those payments as well. So again, no out of pocket for the employers, which is a good thing. And it's also available to your self-employed folks that may not have employees, or you may not be on your own payroll. Again, up to $200 a day, or as much as you make in self-employment earnings, you can get this benefit applied to you as well. So That's the gist of what we're looking at with the school closures and time off and how we're going to deal with that. So again, to recap, employers are going to start setting up a 1 week, mandatory sick time off. That's really more of a go forward program. Right now, what we're talking about is a 2 week, as soon as this bill passes, you get 2 weeks off with pay, 100% of your pay if you are dealing with a coronavirus specific issue, and 2/3 of your pay if you're dealing with a child at home due to a school closure. After that 2 week period of time, you can get up to 3 months of pay continued from your employer at 2/3 of what your normal salary is, tax free. That's important. And you've got to stay out, you got to have 14 days during each 30-day period to qualify for that program. So the devil's in the details, as everything is in the tax world and what Congress is working through. So once this bill gets passed, those will be available to you. We will figure out how to qualify and apply and provide the documentation to prove what you need to prove to get these benefits. Likely it's going to be, doctor's notes and things of that nature that you've got to submit to your employer to make sure that you get these benefits. But just wanted you to be aware and have all this on your radar so you can start planning and thinking through it. And, hopefully the dust will settle pretty soon and we'll be through it and it won't be too problematic, and we can get on with our lives and get our kids back in school and get everything caught back up. If you're like me and we're in the middle of busy season, it's going to be a very interesting time for us and our kids. So good luck, everybody, and I will try to keep these videos updated as we have information coming in from the Senate and additional legislation. So stay tuned. Feel free to subscribe to our Facebook page and our YouTube channel so that you can get informed of these videos. And we will see you then. Thanks. Take care.